The morning sun streamed through the smudged glass windows of Anderson & Co., one of the city's most prestigious corporations. The lobby smelled faintly of polished marble and expensive cologne. People walked briskly, carrying files, laptops, and steaming cups of coffee. In the middle of all this movement stood Emily Carter, clutching a folder against her chest as if it was a shield. Emily wasn't like the other employees who filled the building. She was a single mother, raising her 6-year-old daughter Lily after her husband had walked out 2 years ago. With no financial support, she had learned to fight her way through life, taking temporary jobs until she landed this receptionist role 3 months ago. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and it meant Lily could stay in school without worrying about unpaid tuition. But today felt different. She had received a terse email from her manager, Mr. Rogers, telling her to report to his office at 9 a.m. sharp. The message had been so cold that she hadn't slept all night. Emily adjusted the strap of her worn handbag and approached his office door. She knocked softly. "Come in," came a deep voice. Inside, Mr. Rogers sat behind a massive oak desk, his grey suit pressed to perfection, his eyes sharp behind wire-framed glasses. His office smelled of leather and authority. Emily forced a smile. "Good morning, sir. Sit," he said, not returning the smile. He shuffled some papers before fixing his gaze on her. "Emily, I'm going to be blunt. Your performance has been below standard. You've been late twice this month, and yesterday you took a personal call at the front desk. That's unacceptable." Emily's heart pounded. "Sir, my daughter's school called." I don't want excuses," he interrupted, his tone icy. "This is a corporate environment, not a daycare. We need professionals, not people bringing their personal baggage into the office." His words stung like slaps. Emily clasped her trembling hands in her lap. "I understand, sir. I've been trying. I'll do better." Or Mr. Rogers leaned back, crossing his arms. "I don't think you can. Frankly, I don't think this is the right place for you. I'm terminating your contract. You'll need to clear your desk today." The words crashed over Emily like a wave. "Please," she whispered. "I need this job. My daughter." He raised a hand. "That's not my concern. You'll receive your final paycheck within the week." Emily's throat tightened, her eyes burning. She stood slowly, clutching her folder to keep from shaking. The walls of the office seemed to close in as she turned toward the door. She wanted to scream, to beg, but pride kept her silent. As she walked through the lobby toward her desk, her colleagues glanced at her curiously, sensing something was wrong. She sat down, her hands trembling as she began gathering her few belongings: a framed photo of Lily with her missing front tooth, a chipped coffee mug, a notebook filled with her neat handwriting. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them back. She couldn't fall apart here in front of everyone. Just then, the revolving doors of the building swung open. A tall man in a tailored navy suit walked in, his presence commanding the room instantly. His dark hair was neatly styled, his jaw strong, his eyes sharp yet kind. He walked with the confidence of someone who belonged everywhere. Employees straightened in their chairs, whispering under their breath, "James Anderson, the CEO?" Emily froze. She had only seen him once from afar, when he addressed the staff during an orientation meeting. He was a widower, people whispered. A single father raising his son alone after his wife's sudden passing. James's gaze swept across the lobby, then landed on Emily. Just as she was clutching the photo frame to her chest, her bag half packed, their eyes met. For a moment, the world seemed to still. He walked toward her. The crowd's whispers grew louder. "Miss Carter." His voice was deep, calm, yet filled with curiosity. Emily's throat tightened. She struggled to form words.
"Yes, sir."
"Why are you packing your things?" She swallowed hard. "Mr. Rogers," he said. "I was being let go." A shadow crossed James's face. He glanced toward Rogers's office, then back at Emily. "Is that so?" The weight of his gaze made Emily's heart race. She tried to stand tall, but she felt small under the scrutiny. I made mistakes. I tried, but..." James raised a hand, silencing her gently. "Come with me." He led her through the lobby, up the grand staircase, and into the executive floor. People stopped what they were doing, stunned to see the CEO walking alongside a receptionist carrying a half-packed bag. Inside his sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows, James gestured to a chair. Set. Emily hesitated, then lowered herself into the chair. Her pulse hammered in her ears. James sat opposite her, his elbows resting on his knees. "Tell me everything, and be honest." Emily's lips trembled. She wanted to hold it all inside, but something in his steady gaze made her unravel. She told him about Lily, about struggling to balance work and motherhood, about the phone call from the school when her daughter had been sick. She confessed her fears, her desperation, her attempts to keep up in a world that seemed designed to leave her behind. When she finished, silence filled the room. Emily wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed by her vulnerability. James leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. Emily blinked. "Who?" "My wife," he said, his voice softer now. "She fought for everything she had. She never let anyone tell her she wasn't enough." The grief flickered in his eyes, raw and real. Emily felt a pang of empathy. James straightened, his tone firm. "Mr. Rogers was wrong. This company isn't built by perfect people. It's built by people who care, who fight, who give everything they can. You belong here, Emily. More than you think." Her breath caught. I don't understand. I'm not letting you go," he said simply. "In fact, I want you to work directly under me. My executive assistant position has been vacant for months. It's demanding, but I think you're exactly the kind of person I need, loyal, determined, and strong." Emily stared at him, stunned. "Sir, I'm just—" "You're not just anything?" James interrupted firmly. "You're someone who shows up even when life tries to break you. That's the kind of person I want on my team." Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they weren't from despair. They were from relief, from hope. "Do you accept?" James asked, his gaze unwavering. Emily clutched the photo of Lily in her hands, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Yes, yes, I accept." A faint smile touched his lips. "Good. You start tomorrow." For the first time in months, Emily felt the weight on her chest lift. She wasn't defeated. She wasn't discarded. She had been seen, truly seen. And in that moment, she knew everything was about to change. But what Emily didn't know was that her new role would not only challenge her in ways she couldn't imagine, it would also intertwine her life with James's in a way that neither of them expected. Two single parents, both scarred by loss and rejection, about to discover that sometimes fate doesn't ask permission before rewriting your story. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, Emily stood in front of the tall glass building of Anderson & Co., her reflection shimmering faintly in its windows. She held Lily's small hand tightly, her daughter skipping beside her with the carefree joy only a child could carry. "Mummy, are you nervous?" Lily asked, tilting her head. Emily knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "A little. But sometimes being nervous just means something important is about to happen." Lily grinned, showing off the gap where her tooth had been. "Like when I had my school play."
"Exactly."
Emily kissed her forehead. "Now, off to school. Be good." She watched as Lily climbed onto the school bus, waving until the yellow vehicle turned the corner. Then Emily inhaled deeply and walked inside the building. Everything felt different today. The same lobby where she had been humiliated yesterday now seemed filled with possibility. She was no longer the struggling receptionist being dismissed. She was the CEO's executive assistant. She rode the elevator up to the executive floor, her heart pounding. When the doors opened, James's office was already bustling. Two interns hurried past with stacks of folders, and the phone on her new desk rang constantly. "Good morning, Miss Carter." James's deep voice called from his office door. Emily looked up and smiled nervously. "Good morning, sir." "First rule," he said with a faint grin. "When it's just us, call me James." Her cheeks warmed. "Okay, James," he gestured toward the office. "Come in. We've got a long day ahead." Inside, Emily quickly discovered just how demanding the role was. Scheduling meetings with international partners, sorting through confidential documents, preparing reports, every task required precision. James was sharp, decisive, and relentless in pursuit of excellence. At first, she worried she couldn't keep up, but then something shifted. With every instruction, James took a moment to explain why it mattered. When she stumbled, he didn't scold, he guided. Slowly, Emily's confidence began to grow. By mid-afternoon, she found herself anticipating his needs before he voiced them, having files ready before he asked, drafting emails in his tone, preparing notes ahead of his calls. James noticed, and each time he gave her a small nod of approval, her chest swelled with pride. When the clock struck 6, Emily realized she had barely eaten all day. James looked up from his desk. Hungry, she hesitated. Little? Good. I was about to order dinner. Join me. Emily blinked. Here. He chuckled softly. Yes, here. My son is with my sister tonight, so I'm free. You shouldn't go home hungry. A moment later, a delivery arrived. 2 boxes of steaming pasta. They sat at the round table near the window, the city glowing beneath them. Emily twirled her fork nervously. Thank you for everything. Yesterday I thought my life was falling apart. And now? James leaned back, studying her. Yesterday I saw someone being underestimated. That doesn't sit well with me. Her throat tightened. You barely knew me. His gaze softened. Sometimes you don't need to know someone for years to see who they are. I saw it in your eyes. You were fighting, even when you felt broken. Emily blinked rapidly, trying to push back tears. You don't know what that means to me. For a long moment, they ate in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that felt safe. The weeks rolled into months. Emily settled into her role, balancing work and motherhood with a strength she didn't know she had. She became James's right hand, trusted with projects that shaped the future of the company. And in that time, she saw another side of James, the man behind the suit. She saw him on late nights, rubbing his temples as grief for his wife still shadowed his eyes. She saw the tenderness in him when his son, Ethan, visited the office, climbing into his father's lap as James continued to take calls. One afternoon, Emily stayed late to finish a report. Ethan wandered into her workspace, a toy car clutched in his hand. Hi, he said shyly. Emily smiled. Hey there. What's your car's name, Lightning? He whispered. Good choice. She leaned closer. Want to see something cool? She rolled the car gently across her desk, making engine noises. Ethan giggled, the sound light and pure. James appeared in the doorway, watching them. His expression was unreadable at first, but then softened into something Emily couldn't quite name. Bedtime, buddy? James said. Ethan hugged his father's leg. Okay. As James carried him out, he glanced back at Emily. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though the air between them shifted, charged with something unspoken. But not everyone was happy with Emily's rising position. Mr. Rogers, the manager who had tried to dismiss her, grew bitter. Whispers spread through the office that Emily had caught the CEO's attention, that she had been promoted not by merit but by sympathy. Some colleagues grew cold, their smiles forced. One evening, Emily overheard Rogers speaking to another supervisor. She won't last. She's just a charity case. Anderson will tire of her soon enough. The words sliced deep. That night, she went home in tears, questioning everything. Was she really good enough? Or was she just occupying a seat she hadn't earned? The next morning, she arrived early, determined to prove herself. She buried herself in work, checking every detail, pushing herself past exhaustion. James noticed. Emily, he said one evening when he found her still at her desk long after everyone else had left. Why are you doing this to yourself? She clenched her fists. Because people think I don't deserve to be here. Because I don't want to fail you, or my daughter. James walked closer, his tone firm but gentle. Listen to me. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Not Rogers, not the others. You've earned your place here, and you don't need to prove it by destroying yourself. Her voice broke. What if I'm not enough? James's gaze locked with hers, intense and unwavering. You are more than enough. The room fell silent. The weight of his words lingered, wrapping around her like a shield. For the first time, Emily believed them. One Friday evening, James invited Emily and Lily to join him and Ethan for dinner. At first, Emily hesitated. It felt too personal. But when Lily tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Please, Mommy, I want to meet Ethan," she agreed. They met at a cozy Italian restaurant tucked on a quiet street. James arrived in a casual shirt, his son's small hand in his. The sight of him outside the corporate walls, just a father, made Emily's chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. The children hit it off instantly, giggling over spaghetti and trading stories about school. James and Emily found themselves laughing too, their conversation flowing easily. For a moment, it didn't feel like CEO and assistant. It felt like two people who had walked through storms and finally found shelter in each other. As they left the restaurant, James walked beside her, the children skipping ahead. He glanced at her, his expression serious. "Emily, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I don't want to face it alone anymore." Her breath caught. "James," he stopped, turning to face her fully. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I just needed you to know." Emotion surged in her chest, fear, hope, longing all tangled together. She met his gaze, and for the first time in years, she let herself imagine the possibility of love again. The days that followed weren't perfect. There were challenges, jealous colleagues, grueling schedules, nights when Lily was sick and mornings when James was buried in board meetings. But through it all, they stood side by side. Emily was no longer the woman dismissed in shame by a cold manager. She was a mother, a fighter, a partner in the making. And James was no longer the lonely CEO hiding behind walls of glass and steel. He was a man rediscovering joy, one smile, one laugh, one shared meal at a time. Together, they were rewriting not only their careers but their lives. And it had all begun in the moment when one man told her to leave, only for another to arrive and change everything.